Hello, my name is Mike, and these are some bikes. You know, I started this YouTube channel because I saw a lot of guys that were fixing up cars and giving them their first start after years were being pretty successful. I've been doing this sort of thing for years, mostly on bikes here recently. So I decided this might be a good niche YouTube channel, kind of restoring bikes, getting them running for the first time in years, and getting them back on the road. So I'm going to highlight some of the first starts that I've done over the years, so just stick around. Somewhere in a dusty, dirty back alley in western Arizona is an old fart trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. He'll work on anything, just as long as it's got at least 2 cool wheels. Many years ago, I was an automobile mechanic and I actually worked for dealerships and so forth. I did a lot of work on abandoned cars people would trade in because they were broken, didn't run. I'd pick them up cheap because the dealer didn't want to have to deal with it. But back in those days, well, it wasn't real easy to record the work that you did on vehicles. We had such a thing as an 8mm movie camera. I actually had one of those, but film was kind of expensive. Processing was expensive, and to put together something like you guys are watching now would have been very, very expensive to do, and there wouldn't have been any kind of return on it. The good thing about the internet and the fact that the camera technology has become so inexpensive is things like YouTube and other forms of media have done really, really well as a result, and we can share a lot of our knowledge and a lot of projects with folks like you out there. Now, of course, I've kind of dated myself. Many of the YouTubers that are doing so well with automobile restorations and automobile saving cars, revivals, things like that, a lot of those guys are even younger than my kids. So yeah, kind of dated myself. I started off by doing cars, and then as time went on, I became more and more involved in the motorcycle community. Kind of the reason why is I changed careers. I stopped working on cars and went to work for a company that made power generation, wind turbines, things like that. And the automotive industry has changed quite a bit. So I'm kind of out of the loop on some of the latest technology. Motorcycles are a little simpler to work. The main reason that I'm doing more motorcycles than cars is because I can fit more of them in my garage. I bought this Cougar about 3 years ago, and the lady that was selling it because her father had passed away. And this car sat for about 20 years. So I drug it home and I got it fired up. This is the part I love best. Not half bad. The very first street bike that I owned was a 1981 Kawasaki LTD 550, like the one shown here. Now, here recently, one came up for sale, and I just, well, for nostalgic purposes, had to buy it up. It was missing a bunch of parts, but I got it on the road once again. It took quite a bit of hunting to find some of the parts, and the ignition module was bad, one of the pickups was bad. It needed a bunch of work. I got a lot more money into it than I ended up selling it for, but unfortunately at the time I needed the money, so I had to let it go. But anyway, here is a startup of it after it sat for a while, just to prove to potential buyers that the bike runs good. Okay, I admit, I cheated. I shot a little bit of starting fluid in there. It didn't start right away, but again, it's been sitting for a couple weeks, so I got to use, I only have one hand. I got to pull on the clutch and hit the start button at the same time. The key is on. Fires right up. If you don't let it sit that long, it'll fire pretty much on the first couple of cranks. This particular startup goes back several years. I think this was done probably 2013, 2014. I bought this bike for $200 because it was scattered into 1,000 pieces. A guy had taken it apart. I don't know what he thought he was going to do. It's a very complex bike. It had a radio and an intercom and a CB and stereo and heated seats. And so he had pulled the wire harness out, and I had to figure out where every one of those wires went. I did manage to figure it out. I got it all put back together and cleaned out the fuel system, and found that I was missing power to one pair of cylinders. This is a 6-cylinder bike, so it was like running on 4 cylinders. And it turns out you could actually use the magnetic pickup from a certain model of Suzuki on this Kawasaki, because both companies use the same vendor for their inductive pickups. Anyway, we did get it finally running, and it ran great. Unfortunately, I had to sell it, as is so often the case. This one goes way back as well. When I first got into Victories, this was the first sport cruiser that I'd purchased. Bought it from a guy pretty cheap, had it shipped out here from Kansas because it had the transmission problem that these were known for. Here's a picture of it with the original hammer type engine in it. So this was after I'd learned how to rebuild the transmissions in these. But before I did that, I'd done the conversion that so many people speak of. I'd put a later model, a 2005 Freedom engine in it. And I rode it that way for a while, and then later sold the engine to someone else who needed it because I'd learned how to fix the transmission in the original engine. Both engines ran very, very well. And again, this is one of the bikes that I kind of regret having had to have sold, but you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Anyway, here is the first startup on it after I put that Freedom engine in it. Oh, and you'll notice Stranger in the background before its paint job. Yeah, pretty rusty, huh? We're going to try this again. Key on. Let's see if we can. Okay, probably want to cycle it a couple times, purge the air out of the system. Let's see if she starts. Runner. Another project that I bought and put back together was this I believe it was a 79 XS 1100. At the time, it was the largest four-cylinder, inline four-cylinder you could get. I bought this bike and it came in about 5 crates. The guy disassembled it. He wanted to put a new frame on it because the original frame had been bent in an accident. He had a new frame, but he didn't know how to go about it, so I completed the task. And one of my friends in the area at the time was an exceptional painter, so I took all my motorcycle projects to him for paint. And you can see they turned out really, really well. So here's a couple of videos, one of the first start and then another of me getting the carburetor synchronized. Okay, so this is my temporary fuel tank. Getting ready to send the fuel tank out and get the body components painted. Got a couple of nice seats to choose from. But again, I'm going to send stuff out for paint. And I got some tires coming. And once I clean up the wheels and tires, get some painted components on her, she's going to be a sweet runner. Got all the wiring figured out and all the lights figured out, except for the turn signals. They come on, but they simply don't flash. They only need a flasher. But here's the beautiful thing. Got through the carbs, and all I do is kick it on, give it a little bit of choke. Because most of my project bikes were Victories, I had several of them that were this shade of blue, this black and blue combination. They called it Knock Your Socks Off Blue, or KYSO. Anyway, one of them that I had purchased, again, it was a fuel system issue from sitting so long, and it needed a transmission upgrade as well. I bought it from a guy and I hauled it home in a big step van that I used to have that I had custom designed for hauling motorcycles. It had a lift gate in the back and all that. And on this particular one, my garage was full, so I just fixed it in the back of the step van and got it fired up there. All right, here we go. Another dead beast back to life. This one's still in the back of the truck. Put a fuel pump in it, some lines, and had to configure it so the fuel pump would fit, and so on and so forth. Didn't have a decent battery, but I got a jumper now. Hear the fuel pump go. Here it is. Or not. Hold on, I got to hold the clutch in too. So I'm thrilled to death. Brought another dead one back to life. In my opinion, one of the most underrated bikes that Victory built was one called the Sport Cruiser, or V92SC. It was based on the same frame as the V92C, but it had mid-foot controls, it had a little bit different seat, had different wheels and tires, and had a much more robust front suspension and dual disc brakes. So it was a sportier version, and I had several of them over the years. Here we have 3 of them I owned at one time. One of them, the black one, when I purchased it, it looked something like this. Once again, it was what I purchased in pieces, and put back together, and it's actually one of the bikes that I still have. I hauled it home. The engine was already out of it, and when I got it home, I had to go through the engine. Once again, I had it painted. I had the wheels powder coated, and it's a bike I still have today. One of my very favorite bikes. I couldn't part with this one. So I still have it, still ride it, still love it. But here's the first start after I put the engine back in. And this is the part I like best. Got everything put together to the point where I can actually start it. I have my low budget artificial fuel tank in place, tied into the system. Got a new fuel pump. Had a little problem with the injectors, couldn't get it to pop. And I believe that my injectors are plugged up. You know, the engine sat for a while and so forth. So we'll give it just a tad bit of throttle. Key on. And ignition switch here hanging. And our final first start clip that we're going to have in this video is a 2005 Victory Hammer. Once again, I bought it in really bad condition. Engine had issues. I actually found a used engine on Craigslist, which I put in it, and worked with my friend, my painter friend, and did a custom paint job on it to match the name of the bike. And here's its first start. All right, finally got all the details done. Got the mystery engine put in the Hammer I picked up really cheap. Only paid a couple $100 for the motor. It was a mystery motor, but showed good compression. And now we can actually fire this bad girl up. I love it when a plan comes together. Well, I hope you all found these quote first starts interesting. If you get into this sort of thing, if you're working on cars or motorcycles, one of the greatest feelings of accomplishment is when you push that button or you turn that key and it comes back to life. I can't tell you what a great feeling that is, and that's one of the reasons I keep doing this. Stick around for more videos. I just thought this would be a good opportunity to show you some of the stuff I've done in the past, and there's more stuff to come in the future. We'll see you on the next video.